your permanent advisor or not yet.
Okay, so you have your advisor na?
Yes, Doc. I was given an advisor already, Doc.
Who's mo advisor? Si Ma'am Ivy? Ma'am
Nelia, Doc.
O, si Nelia. Kasi what's your topic gani, Joliza?
The language of fishing.
It's forensic linguistics, Doc. It's about phishing emails.
And then si Nelia? Well, anyway.
Yes, Doc. Actually, I was informed during the concept paper presentation that as of the moment, there is no specific faculty who specializes on forensic linguistics. But it's okay now, Doc, because we can invite external panel member who specializes on the field.
No, sige na lang. I won't argue na lang because during their deliberation, wala po ko ato, no? Sige ra magod meeting
niya. Yes,
yeah, linguistics magod jud siya. Then, or siguro, forensic linguistics kasi more on the CDA. So, and anyway, kaya rin po na ni Nelia. Siguro nagustuhan niya Joliza.
Yeah, Doc, I was also informed by one of the teachers who were there back then that I can make use of the CDA daw, Doc.
Kaya nga kasi it's forensic linguistics. Kaya rin ng Nelia, kaya rin ng tunan. Sige lang. So, kinsa na lang yun ang mag-title presentation or title defense? Si Ryan, si Albert, who else? Aliyah, are you done, Aliyah?
Not yet, Doc. Kami po nila Sir Ryan.
Aliyah, Salha also, no?
All of us, Doc, except for Sir Vince and Ma'am Joliza, Doc.
Ah, okay. Alright. Sige. So, yun na ha. Unahon yun nato yung title presentation. After that, we will agree na dayon of when atong exam. Because it will really be F to F. Alright? So, Vincent is here. Hello, Vincent. Hello, Jamil. And
hello,
Salha and Sophie. Oh, Vincent, any news? Vincent?
So far, Doc, wala may update from the Talaandig community here in Lantapan, Doc.
Hello, guys.
Okay.
I'm having
that's
my
all right.
class.
Oy, let's agree na lang. Mulaag lang ta dito. Ano tayo trabahoon? Para na tayo outing. No?
Oh, okay.
Anak na lang siguro. Kay lisod naman. Wala na time. But we should really go out. Oh,
Very
yeah.
country.
So, we'll think of a reason para makagamit ang vehicle sa IIT. Sige lang, ako na mag-think ka na. So, ang inyong paper is, kato na gina yung paper nga gina-plano, okay?
Can we still work by pair, Doc, for the paper in this class?
Sige. Para po gamay na lang kung basahon. Bitaw, pwede ra pod. Walo man mo, no? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So, you choose your partners na and agree kinsa nga paper ang final. Okay?
Thank you very much, Doc. But if
you choose to go solo, then okay ra pod. Ha?
But the paper will have to be comparative, Doc, ba?
Oo. Yeah. Okay. Yes, Jamil.
Doc, di pa parang inuntan na kasi sa project ng I will compare the grammar and the verbs of Japanese language and English language.
Yeah, mamuto yung proposal, Jamil. Yeah.
Yes, Doc. Yes, Doc. I'm doing it, Doc.
Alright. Yeah.
Thank you, Doc.
Sige, so we will start na. Okay na to, Vincent? Basta, ang dili mo appeal sa laag sa Lantapan, INC.
Oh my God, INC.
Sige, Doc.
Bitaw, kasi ninyo kung isumbong ha. Bitaw, it's not really, nga nanilak si Ryan. Kaya di ka ka-appeal, Ray?
No joke. No, kuya ko joke kayo. Game.
Bitaw, dili na pamugos, oy. Diba? But I really want to listen ng good po unsa nang inistoryahan sa Talaandig. Talaandig to Vincent, no? You won't be gathering data. Mulag lang ta dito istorya gamay. Ana ra, ha? Sige. And we'll set that after the title presentation or title defense bitawag nila na. Okay, shall we start now? We'll have Brian. July sa question. Yes, July.
Yes, Doc, clarification, Doc. Since we won't be doing the field work anymore, the requirement in this class is the paper that we have been working on. Do we need to present that in the class, Doc, or simply to submit to you, Doc?
Present.
Present.
Still present. Anyway, dali lang man.
Yes,
Because
Doc.
I will get me 3 teachers to sit down.
Yes, Doc.
Na?
Similar with
Ano?
what happened last time, Doc. Presentation
Yes,
and then
yes.
what followed was the quiz or the exam.
Bot mo ba to? Basta ka na dayon.
Okay, Doc. Thank you very much, Doc.
Okay. Sige. Now we can start. Ryan? Right?
Yes, Doc. Okay.
Okay.
Is my screen available in your end?
Yep.
Yeah.
Clear.
About my voice, Doc, is it loud and clear?
Yes, Rai.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Doc. So we are now the last two reporters. So finally, we will be finishing everything, especially for this report, Doc. So I am tasked to discuss regarding the Western Austronesian voice, and this is authored by Victoria Chen and Bradley McDonald, 2019. Okay, so let's start with one. Okay, don't you know that according to Mayor 2010, Tomlin, no, it's 1986, recent cited by Mayor 2010, survey that the proportion of the world languages sentence patterns, if you notice, the highest sentence pattern is SVO, 45%, and the least is OSV. Now, if you look at in Asia, or especially in the Philippines, we are actually the third. We rank third in terms of we are in the third part where we follow the sentence pattern as VSO, where the verb as initial, no, the predicate as initial part of the sentence, as compared to the other languages, the SVO and SOV. So there are two languages which we're going to compare this afternoon. We have the Philippine type language, or we code it as a PH type, and the other one is the Indonesian type language, or Indo-Type language. So again, the Philippine type language, PH type language, and we have the Indonesian Indo-Type language. So if you notice, the Philippine follows the VSO, and the Indonesian is SVO. So 42% in the world languages followed SVO, but 9% only as a VSO. Okay, now as you can see on the map, this is where the distributions of the Austronesian languages. So according to a migration theory, most of the Western Austronesian voice disseminated here, the Philippines, Indonesia, and Madagascar. And we have the part in the Pacific. It's already another part of the Austronesian directions. Then accordingly, most of the proto structures of our languages were actually coming from a Formosan. So there was a great migration in the Taiwan. So there are two major migration in the history. We have in the Africa, and we have also here in Asia, especially in Taiwan. So people went to the west and others went to the other parts. So now this is what they call the migration theory, where the early Austronesian speaking peoples were located on Taiwan and the northern Philippines, specifically Luzon. They are indigenous to Taiwan and live in Luzon since 7,000 years ago, expanded to maritime Southeast Asia, Polynesia, subsequently to Madagascar and other regions. If you notice the distributions of the migrations, no wonder that Filipinos and Indonesians, in terms of the facial features, are quite similar. No, people tend, when they watch, for example, a TikTok or a Facebook, then they ask, "Are you Filipino?" No, I'm not Filipino. We are Indonesian. Okay, so now In the Western voice, we have this so-called as the Austronesian Western Austronesian voice is called to be as symmetrical voice, and there's another one called to be as asymmetrical. So my focus in this comparative language linguistics is on the symmetrical voice. So symmetrical voice, other known as Austronesian alignment. So alignment in terms of morpho-alignment, morpho-syntactic alignment, which is the Philippine type voice system follows, or what we call the Austronesian focus. So when you say morpho-syntactic alignment, this is an argument. When you say argument, the very core of the sentence is the verb. So the verb carries the valencies, or carries the number of objects, whether it is in the agent or in the object. So it could be monotransitive, it could be ditransitive. So the verb is the very core that produces the quality of the noun, no, in a phrase or in a clause. So that is according to Blas 2013. So there's another technical term for that, is what they call the focus marking, as to where is the emphasis, whether it is in the subject or the agent, or it is found in the object. Okay, so for example, in Tagalog, to identify the markings of the voice system, actually there are three of them. They're active, passive, and there are many. It's Indonesian rather. There are four voices that we have. We are active, patientive, locative, and with a circumstantial, circumstantive voice. Okay, here in active we have kumain si Maria ng mansanas. Now the focus there is on the verbal affix. To determine the voice of the sentence is to look at the verb. Okay, so the verbal affix to identify that the next word marking, case marking si Maria, will tell us that the sentence is actually an active voice sentence. But if you alter it to passive voice, so we focus on the object rather than the subject. Mansanas ang, so there's a verbal affix in, an insertion in the root or in between of the word or base of the verb to determine the function in the sentence. However, in Indonesian, an active voice sentence is Ani makan apel. In translation in English, Ani eats the apple. So Ani is a subject, makan verb, apple is the apple, follows the SVO. Sa kumain si Maria and ng mansanas rather, it's SVSO. Now to alter it, to convert that to passive, what happens then in Indonesia is you focus on the object, you place it at the beginning, and add a prefix D attached to the verb makan. So apple, di makan. So the moment you see D attached to a verb, so that will indicate that the sentence becomes passive. So ole there is actually by phrase. So this, in literal way, the apple is eaten by Ani. In Indonesian type, the ole is by phrase na siya, where it can be optional. So optional, if it is intentional, you will use ole. If it is accidental, that Ani ate the apple, so there's no need to indicate ole. Now, let's look at the language typology of Austronesian. So, there are two classifications. We have the Formosan and the Malayo-Polynesian. So, Formosan is it is believed that the origin of the language structures, most of the language structures, from the Formosan, according to the SIL 1996. So we have the Western Malayo-Polynesians, where Filipino languages belong, and some features, language features of Indonesia and Micronesians belong here. Okay, so we have symmetrical voice, known to be as the languages of the Philippines, also found in Taiwan's Formosan, Borneo, Sulawesi, and Madagascar. We may not have the same sentence structures, grammar, but the case markings such as the si, ang, and the insertion of the affix in the verb may have similarity depending on the focus, or what we call the voice. So the term Austronesian focus was widely used in early literature, but more scholars prefer to use voice rather than focus because it's polysemous. There are other ways, syntactic terms that focus function. So we would just use the word voice to determine the quality of the verb that serves as argument that will produce number of objects, or the function of the agent, patient, and we have the locative and so on. Okay, other textbooks, other literatures, instead of saying voice or focus, they use it as trigger. So depending on the context, when say you trigger, it's the same use when you say focus or when you say the voice. Okay, but trigger is essentially used in discourse in terms of creating meaning. So we have conventional understanding. We have also by Schuster understanding of focus and topic. So if you look at the conventional understanding, for example, John bought a new car. The focus is in the new information, but the topic here is the subject. So depending on how it is in the use in the syntactic function, so other would say trigger is actually referring to the topic, no? For example, trigger, others will say focus, others will say depending on how it is constructed in the sentence. So John bought a new car. The focus is on the new car. But here in the sentence, conventionally, we know that the voice here is the subject, verb, object. Okay, so we have Star Rosta 2002. Neither the voice and focus is correct, but other would say it's another highly technical terms. Though the more we advance our knowledge in linguistics, the more highly technical terms that we use. But if you come to think about it, they are just similar in their functions. They just vary in terms of their contexts. Okay, now let's focus on, I want you to take a closer look on this, because this is somehow like main reference on how we understand the case markings of the Western Austronesian voice. So this is from the Formosan Paiwan. It's in the eastern part in Taiwan. And if you notice, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 1A, 1B, 1C, and 1D. So the first sentence is the actor voice. And then we have the patient voice. 1C is locative voice. And we have the circumstantial voice. So here, if you look at the gloss structure, the AV here is the active voice. Now there's a term pivot. Okay, others will say it's pivot. Okay, because it's Filipinos will say pivot. Okay, to have a convention on how we pronounce it, we just use the word pivot. Pronounce it as pivot. Others will say pivot. Now there's what they call Kwamulup, okay? Kwamalup ak xiao xiao tu vavoy igadu tuavuluk. Okay, now there's a insertion of the affix in the verb kwamalup. When you insert M there, that signals that the sentence is active voice. And the case marking of the article, will also help to locate who does the action, who is the doer of the action. So the pivot there is a case marking indicating the presence of the doer. So ang Pai1 is a VSO. So again, ang base niya is without the M, kalupa. When you insert the M, just like bumili, and binili, will indicate the voice system in the sentence. Okay, on the other hand, if the focus is in the object or the patient, or the being object that is affected by the action, so it's no longer the insertion of the verbal affix M, but you add en at the last of the verb. So it becomes kalupen. Kalupen, the insertion of en there is a verbal suffix to indicate that the focus is on the subject. So what happens then to the case marking? So the pivot supports the presence of the being affected, which is the patient. So since we have the patient, so kalupen, where's now the pivot there? The pivot there is in the article a. So a vavoy is now the case marking the presence of the object being affected by the verb. Then another one, if you want to make the sentence in a locative manner, and say the place exactly, so the quality of the verb, it's insertion of the suffix an to to indicate that the sentence is in the locative mode or voice. So we have the PIV there. The PIV is the case marking that will support, no, where is the focus in the sentence. So we have now the mountain. If you have the OBL there, if you notice, oblique, others will say it's applicative morphology. It's just para siyang adjunct or additional information that the verb produces. So we have also the circumstantial. So you say what material that the person in the sentence uses. So we have the addition of C at the beginning of the verb. So there is a morphological change, and the additional the insertion of C is now indicating that the presence of the sentence is circumstantial. Now let's look at the PIV or the pivot, which is the case marking, helping to indicate, okay, who is using, what is being used in the sentence, what material. The man hunts wild pigs in the mountains with a spear. Okay, so that's the Formosan, the structure, which is most linguists will use as main reference to across languages. However, we may not have the same structure, but the case marking, for example, the use of nang, si, sa tua, si Maria, ang, and ni, and so on, will help us. These are called to be as pivot. So major typological distinction in Western Australian language is that between Philippine type languages and Indonesian type languages. So suki see these two languages in the Western Austronesian languages according to these authors. So generally speaking, the Philippine type refers to the voice system that exhibits multiple, typically three. Tulang at tuwa, we have the patientive, locative, and circumstantial as compared to the Paiwan. And most of this type system found in the Austronesian languages are actually spoken, actually mga case marking of the pivot, called to be pivot, the Taiwan, the Philippines, North Borneo, Northern Sulawesi, and Madagascar, and the Chamorro or from the Guam. Then ang sa Indonesian type is actually the voice system found languages like Maduris and Indonesians. So here in the active and passive voice in the Indonesian, okay, they differ. If you notice, we have the Bahasa Malaysia o Bahasa Indonesia. So ang Bahasa Malaysia is actually politically conquered by the British, and the Indonesia Bahasa is actually historically colonized by the Dutch. So if you notice, they have the same grammar structure but they differ in terms of lexical. So kalain na lang nila if these two, example, mga taga Malaysia speaking Malaysia Bahasa Indonesia, they are mutually intelligible, but there are only certain fewer changes in their structures in terms of the use of we have function words. You say function words in terms of conjunctions, we have prepositions, we have also some articles. They only differ in terms of function words, but in terms of content words such as mga adjective, mga nouns, verbs are quite similar. Okay, for example, we have saya makan nasi. So saya means I, makan is rice, eat, nasi is rice. Ako makan are. So if you notice, so there's a variation in terms of the use of pronoun, but to convert that into passive, they use the same objects. However, kailangan lang is nasa'y nasi, the rice. So if it is passive voice, you add di at the beginning of the verb, di makan. So nasi di makan, the rice is eaten oleh saya. Sa Indonesian grammar, they don't have tenses. So they don't have like present tense, past tense. They only use mga adverbial time. So for example, sudah, we say tapos na. So the insertion of adverbial time before or after the verb will indicate the timeline of the sentence. For example, you say saya makan nasi, saya sudah makan nasi, because saying I ate rice. So the insertion of adverbial time will indicate how things or how the action is done. Okay, so unlike us, so we just change the morphology and so on. So in Maduris, this is still in the islands of parts of the Indonesia, so they call it as are. So are there for them is variations of rice. diraku. So if you notice, so ilaha ang mangan sa ilaha is diraku mangan. So there is are is rice, mangan is eaten, and dira is the presence of, you just instead of saying aku sa ilaha is the insertion of the insertion of deer, and then with the apostrophe of ku. So again, Indonesian Mandaris, they are variations in terms of structures, but they're actually mutually intelligible. But how about in the Philippines? So in the Philippines, we have canonical Philippine type voice system. You say canonical, this is the established voice system that we follow. And accordingly to McDonald and Chen 2019, there are 4 traits in the Philippine voice system. So number 1 is every clause or every sentence must have one and only phrase that is syntactically privileged. You say syntactically privileged, that is being focused and bears pivot marking, which is the particle before the subject. So the selection of the pivot is cross-reference by obligatory affixal morphology. So if there is the focus of the subject is also the change of the subject, the change of pivot marking to the subject is also the change of the verbal affix. So it's obligatory. So they always go hand in hand. So the change of pivot marking is also the change of the affixal morphology depending on the focus, called to be as voice. So for example, hinabol ng pusa ang daga. So that hinabol, so nang is the pivot marking indicating the presence of the subject. So the change of pivot, so the change also for the verbal affix in, the insertion in. Number 2, according to the canonical Philippine type voice system, we have all verbs are obligatorily marked with a voice affix. So what are these affixes? We have the prefix, infix, and the suffix. So when you say, for example, the obligatory mark with the voice system is the quality of the verb in the morphology, that takes an affix to determine the role of a noun in a phrase or a clause. If you notice, kumakain, the insertion of there is a verbal affix that takes to determine the role of a noun, which is the object ba siya or the agent in a phrase or a clause. So whether that is agentive, patientive, and so on. Number 3, 4 traits of the Philippine type system is what we call when a phrase is non-pivot. So non-pivot is another marking which is not obligatory, carries a fixed argument making regardless of the voice. For example, nakikita ng aso ang pusa. So here, ang nakikita ng aso, that is our pivot, ng aso, that is our pivot marking, nakikita. Ang pusa is another term for the non-pivot is what we call the oblique or what we call the adjunct or additional information that the verb produces. Dili pwede na nakikita ng aso. So kulang siya, Nakikita ng aso, so that is the pivot marking the nang, and the obligatory mark which is the use of nakiki. So now there is an adjunct which is the additional information in the sentence where the verb produces, which is the ang pusa. So another term for the oblique is what we call applicative morphology. Okay, in relative clauses or pseudo clef, and says relative clauses, these are referring to the use of that, which, and who. For example, Maria, who is my friend, is here. So the use of who is my friend is actually a relative clause, So here, ang libro na binasa niya ay maganda. The book that she read is beautiful. So binabasa niya is a relative clause which also marked with a voice morphology with the use of binabasa indicate that the structure is relativized, which is relative clause, and also considered as a pivot marking. So again, the quality of the verb, which is in the Western Austronesian, takes an affix, additional affix in the verb to determine the role of the noun, whether that is the doer or whether that is the object or the patient or locative, the place, or okay, in a phrase or a clause. Okay, now this is quite technical. So if you notice, let's look at this is referring to the semantics though. So the example, the agent, theme, locative, and instrument. So in a vertical, in each of this vertical, no, actor, patient, voice, locative, circumstantial. Kung ang sentence is if the focus is in the doer of the action, which is the actor voice, so ang agent becomes the focus, which is the pivot. The rest of the sentences, the rest of the words in the sentences will play the role of non-pivot, locative, and oblique, which is the additional information. If the structure of the sentence is patientive, okay, patientive voice, so it's no longer on the agent, but it's on the theme, which is the object that being affected by the verb. And if the sentence is locative, for example, the focus is now on the locative expression, okay, with the marking of pivot, and the rest becomes non-pivot, 1 and 2, and oblique. But if it is circumstantial, for example, voice, the focus is now in the instrument. Last time, for example, it was shared by for example, as shared by Sir Sophie, and the focus indicates voice, no? When you say active voice, the subject has the role of an agent, patient is the object, no, affected by, no, affected object. We have circumstantial voice, benefactive or instrument, and we have the locative. Kapag yung active voice, for example, bumili siya ng sapatos kay Maria, so the verbal affix will indicate that is a present tense. She buy some shoes from Maria. So the word bumili siya ng sapatos, siya is that becomes then the pivot marking of the doer of the actions. Kapag if you say patient in the patient voice, binili niya ang sapatos kay Maria, so the object, so binili niya ang sapatos, ang sapatos becomes the pivot. So if you say binilhan, so the insertion of the verbal suffix na han, so it's obligatory siya. So it's no longer si Maria, it's no longer ng sapatos, but the locative voice becomes referring to the sa tindahan. So sa tindahan is now the pivot marking. So with the morphological change and morphological formation with the addition of the suffix, which is the han. Kung circumstantial siya, for example, ibinili niya ang sweldo niya ng sapatos para kay Maria. Okay? So ang circumstantial is para kanino. So the ibinili, so the insertion of the prefix e, binili, for example, so that will tell us that the role of the verb, no, determines the function of the noun. So that is circumstantial. So binili niya ang sweldo niya ng sapatos para kay Maria. Para kay Maria is now our pivot marking. Okay, so let's continue. Just a review. Okay, so this is now the Tagalog voice case marking that we have. So we have 4 basically. So we have actor, patientive, we have locative, and circumstantial. This is, I just translated this one into Tagalog from the Formosan language. So let's look at here. So nangangaso ang lalaki ng mga baboy ramo sa bukid gamit ang sibat. In English, the man hunts wild pigs in the mountains with a spear. So now, since Tagalog, Filipino type language is VSO, so the role of the verb, the quality of the verb that takes an affix determines the role of the noun in a clause or in a phrase. So nangangaso. So the word nangaso, so will indicate that our focus is in the doer of the action, which is the agent, ang lalaki. So our pivot marking there, which is that particle ang, okay, helps us to determine that the sentence, the focus is in the doer of the action. So the rest of the words in the sentence function as non-pivot, locative, and oblique. The number 1 is nangangaso ng mga baboy ramo ang lalaki sa bukid gamit ang sibat. So here, still we have the word nangangaso. So if you nangangaso ang lalaki, and if you notice, no, there's no change of the verb is still nangangaso because this is in the present tense. Okay, the man Hans nangangaso. Okay, so ang pivot marking is the word ng mga baboy ramo. So the ng mga is actually our pivot marking that the function of the sentence is in the passive mode. Okay, then we have also nangangaso sa bukid. So the pivot marking sa from the nangangaso will tell us it's a locative, no? So the positioning of the words. In circumstantial, what material that the person used, okay, gamit ang sibat, that is our mode, no? Gamit nangangaso ang lalaki ng mga baboy ramo sa bukid. Okay, so here, if you look at another one example for Tagalog and Lumubog. Okay, kumanta si Juan. So the there, so which is the marking, verbal marking that the sentence is in the active voice, no? Okay, one sang, no? Si is actually pronoun pivot, the marking indicating the doer or the actor or the agent. Lumubog si Juan, so John sang is actually our active voice with theme like pivot. So okay, now let's proceed now to the Indonesian. Okay, actually, honestly, I really have hard time in learning another language, which is the Indonesian. And I found this one clip, no, I just screenshot this one. So there's an expression, there's a sentence. I read a book happily this morning at the library. So ang Indonesian type language is SVO, no, as counterpart of the VSO in the Philippines. So saya is I, membaka is read, buko is a book, dengan bahagya is happily, and then tadi pagi, this morning, the perpustakaan is at the library. Now if you look at these are sentences below. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8 sentences, no? So the change of the marking, the change of the subject still makes sense in the sentence. For example, membaka buku dengan bahasa. So if you place the verb at the beginning of the sentence in Indonesia, will still make sense. Okay, membaka buku, read a book, dengan bahagi, and then the saya is actually placed, no, in the middle. So if the sentence is dengan bahagya, which is the happily, which is actually an adverb, then the rest is still SVO. Tadi pagi is a this morning. This is a adverb of time. So the rest is SVO. The perspukan in the yellow one, we are now in the fourth line at the library. This is a prepositional phrase that functions an adverb. So then saya is I read the book happily, and so on. Saya dengan, so the interchange of the transposition of the adverbs will doesn't affect, no, the role of the subject verb in the sentence. Okay, so except for if the sentence pattern is OVS, dili siya pwedeng OVS in the Indonesian structure. Okay, it means to say a book read I, so dili pwede. So ang sa Indonesian is SVO, pwede po siya mag VOS, except for OVS. Okay, now let's look at some sentence pattern in Indonesia. So the black is the subject, verb is the orange one, and the green is the object. So saya makan tempe. Tempe is actually a kind of traditional food in Indonesia. Okay, but you can also say tempe saya makan. Tempe saya makan. When you say tempe I eat. Pwede yan siya. That's acceptable in Indonesia. You can also say makan tempe saya or VO, okay, VOS. So makan tempe saya, VOS. But it is not acceptable in Indonesia if the sentence pattern is OVS, tempe makan saya. So there's a fluidity in terms of the structure of the sentence in Indonesia, except for the OVS. Okay, how about for the passive? The one that I presented was actually an active. So how about for passive voices? Okay, so if you make your sentence passive voices, if you want to highlight the object of the sentence rather than the doer of the action. So there are two functions when you use passive voice in Indonesia. Okay, so it's either you did it intentionally or you did it unintentionally or inadvertently. So there's the insertion of prefix D before the verb if it is intentional, the insertion of ter prefix before the verb to determine the intentions, whether intentional or, for example, kaki saya din injak oleh abang. It means my foot was stepped on by my brother. So if you use D as that is the presence of the use of D embedded in the verb will signify that the sentence is passive. Okay, if it is intentional, you say di ijak oleh abang. Pigsabani, in other words, my brother intentionally stepped my foot. Okay, if it is unintentional, if you notice, we don't use di, but we use ter prefix before the verb, the main verb. So kaki saya, okay, kaki is the object which is being highlighted as in a sentence in the passive voice. Saya is I. Terinjak. So the ter prefix will pragmatically tell us that my brother did not intentionally step my foot. So the use of ter. Now the by phrase, which is the ole in Indonesia, if it is unintentional, it is optional. So the use of ole as a by phrase is unintentional. Kung if intentional, you have to indicate who intentionally stepped my foot. So I have to indicate the use of ole, the by phrase, my brother. But if it is unintentional, so no need to mention the one who stepped because it's unintentional. Okay, again, the use of the prefix if you're referring to intentional, and the use of ter and the passive voice if is unintentional. So omit the ole, the by phrase, if it is unintentional. Insert or embed the ole if it is intentional. Okay, now let's look at that Indonesian type voice system. So we have the actor voice labeled as AV, and we have also the UV, which is the undergoer voice, or known to be as the patient. So the patient is basically the recipient of the action, and of course the AV is the doer of the action. Now the verb in the AV construction in the sentence, nasa yung mga nasal prefix. What are the nasal sounds we have? We have the M, N, G. Okay? So nasal prefix at the beginning, nasa yung abstractly represented by the N, for example, it's a homoorganic, okay? Homoorganic. It means to say they function in the same place of near to our place of articulations. So dual-dual lang siya sa sounds, no? For example, bilabial is a homoorganic placement of articulations. Like sa mga bilabial, what are the sounds that we can produce? The pa, the soft, the voiceless bilabial, pa. We have also the ba, okay, and so on. So these are the homoorganic, place of articulations. They happen at the same part of our vocal tract. So, for example, sa Maduris, so it's found in the place in Indonesia. So the use, for example, we have the gur, okay, to hit nasal prefix ng. So in actor voice construction, so the presence of ng added to the gur, it tells us that the sentence is in the actor voice, no? However, in Balinese, still part in the Indonesia, the root is nyak, and the additional of insertion of the undergoing voice construction nyak. Okay, where are we now? Undergoing. Okay, the word is nyak, to drink, and there's no overt prefix. Okay. So ang Manduris, you have to add a nasal prefix to determine the sentence is in the active voice, but in Balinese, there's no the insertion of the nasal prefix. Yeah, still the same. Okay, now the pivot is another term for a marking to indicate the subject or other objects. So Indonesian type languages is the actor in the AV construction. Non-pivot, these are additional informations, okay, words in the sentence, okay, that indicate the undergoing in the construction. Let's look at the sentence. In the pivot marking, sa Indonesia is ani memasak nasi. So we know that Indonesia is SVO, in the Philippines is VSO. But we can do SVO in the Philippine sentence, but it's unusual and be used as poetic sentence. No, but usual construction that we have is VSO. Okay? So if you say SVO in the Philippine sentence, poetic siya, unusual. So si Maria ay kumain. So, di ba? That is the poetic way. But actually, in the ordinary, you say kumain si Maria. Tagalog, no? Nagluto si Maria ng pagkain, and in Javanese, other part, it's buti mambakar ikan. Okay, so if you notice, the pivot marking there is the okay, here in the concept, the pivot is referring to the subject. Okay, so ani, may masak, si Maria is the marking from the verbal affix sa nagluto, si Maria. Budi is still SVO. Mga non-pivot marking, for example, if you say nasi dimasak ani, rice is cooked by ani. So what are the ani here in the non-pivot in the passive voice Indonesia is non-pivot. This is no longer the focus, but rather on the nasi. So here, Indonesian, nasi dimasak ani, nasi there is the object that is being focused in the sentence. That becomes the pivot. But ang non-pivot marking in that sentence is ani. Non-pivot is no longer the focus. Niluto ni Maria ang pagkain. So si ni Maria in the highlighted yellow is our not focus. So not pivot ang tawag ay na. So niluto ang pagkain. Okay? O, ang pagkain there is our pivot marking. In Javanese, so budi is the non-pivot. Okay. Now, unlike the Philippine type languages, we have the intransitive verbs. Okay, so when we say intransitive verbs, these are verbs that don't produce objects in the sentence. So, for example, she sang. So, you don't expect objects after the verb. So, intransitive. So, a technical term, we call it as monotransitive, intransitive. Okay, ditransitive. No. It's intransitive. No object, no, that the verb produces, no. Vary in how they are realized. In many languages, they are commonly unmarked, but can occur with a number of prefixes, each with its own semantics. So let's look at the bear undergoer voice. So, undergoer is the patient. So we have I bought the pig. So bawine punika tumbas tiyang. So the word pig there, no, bawine, punika is the that, and then undergoer tumbas, and then we have the I. So the undergoer voice there is the pig. So if you notice, it is unmarked and with the use of the word ne. So the ne there is the prefix that will mark, no, uncommonly, no, and that will indicate that the presence of the sentence is in the patientive mode. Okay, allow me to skip to the other one. Okay, so Indonesian type voice system, especially in Manduris, so actor non-pivot argument is still adjacent near to the verb but is marked by a verbal prefix not found in the bear. When say bear, wala, no? So UV. For example, we have the word bear marking sa Indonesia and the prefixal UV construction. So the verb mangan, mangantano, ng mangan is yung si kaon, actor na to is ako, so ako mangan. So in a sentence, ang bear marking sa nato I eat, so there is no prefix, additional prefix there, active voice siya, no? But in Manduris, to make it focus is on the, no, example I eat, you just say naku mangan. So here the aku there, which is the I, is not the focus but on the verb. That's why it is called to be as the intransitive. So okay, there is what we call last time mentioned what we call the nominative accusative alignment, and we have also the ergative absolutive alignment. English and other languages follows the subject-verb-object. So the nominative there is referring to the subject, and the accusative is a technical term that simply refer to object. Okay, so accusative. So we have the nominative accusative alignment is just the SVO. So accusative is a technical term for object, especially direct object. So what is the opposite of direct object? We have indirect. So another technical term for indirect object is what we call the dative. So the dative there is the indirect object. But in some other languages, okay, we rarely found ergative absolutive alignment sa English. Na may gamay, susceptible, tendency lang sa English to become ergative nominative. So yung ergative nominative is the role of the verb that can either produce object or not. But ang ergative absolutive is just, for example, I'll give you an example in English. The door opens. Okay, I open the door. So the verb there I used in the two sentences, open. Okay, so the door opens. Okay, so there, so that is the ergative, the role of the verb as ergative. So the ability to have an action, no, on its own. The door opens. Okay. Another one is I open the door. Okay. Still the verb. Okay. I open the door. Okay. So the ability of the verb that can either be transitive or intransitive is what they call ergative. So not all verbs can be ergative. So try to look for a subject that is inanimate and try to create an action out of it, and then it creates a action. For example, the ice melts. O, diba? It can create on its own action. So that melts there, and then try to look for, add a animate object, animate subject, which is I melt the ice cream. How did I melt the ice cream? By exposing it to the sun, for example. So the word melt, open are called to be ergative. So absolutive there, ang ingon tag absolutive, it's just like subject. So usually in some languages like mga Basque language, ang subject is found after the verb. Or siya VS, ang ergative absolutive. But in English, we have the nominative, subject comes first, then the object, no, SVO. Nominative, accusative, that is object, SVO. Ang ergative absolutive is VS. Okay? So, yung sa ergative verbs, the quality of the verb that function both transitive or intransitive. Whew. Okay, so let's now look at the Indonesian type voice system. Okay, so here bare undergoer voices and prefixal undergoer voices. So sa Indonesian, if you look at the verb, for example, it can either add prefix or wala. So depending on the areas in Indonesia. So we have benefactive applicative, locative applicative, instrumental applicative, and causative with applicative function. So ang applicative, these are mga oblique, these are words at the end of the sentence that the verb requires. For example, ang benefactive, no, who benefits the actions. So for example, this suffix indicates that the action of the verb is done for the benefit of someone or something. Okay, for example, membelikan, okay, from belly, to buy for someone. So the word it's actually membikan. So the insertion of the infix belly there will indicate that is in benefit for someone. So the use of, that's what we call benefactive applicative. So that's why there's what we call applicative morphology. So the role of the verb that takes an affix that determines the role of the noun in a clause or in a phrase, no? Locative applicative is a place. So the use of prefix in the verb to determine the place, no? For example, the use of the verb insertion. For example, we have may masakan. So the use of masak, which is no the prefix, we have the melikan, mekan. So to indicate that the verb function as locative applicative. So we have also instrumental applicative with the use of guitar, ming guitar. Kung kita tag guitar, which is the gitara, okay, that is the instrument. So more on the how the prefix embeds to the root word, causative, okay, to cause something. Okay, unlike for the Philippine languages, these suffixes freely combine with voice prefixes. So pwede siya sa tubangan, pwede siya sa gitna, pwede po siya sa last part. So sa Indonesian na siya, no? So the valency. When you hear the word valency, it is referring to the number of arguments that the verb produces. So for example, valency, na siya direct object ba siya or direct object or wala. Okay? So increasing the suffixes. So kung sa voice prefix plus the applicative suffix, so na siya prefix which is at the beginning and na po siya sa last part, so muna siya circumfix, no, kung sa English. For example, we have the D tapos na matay masak. So here is to be cooked for someone. So for someone is our oblique, still part of the function in the sentence which the verb produces in the state of valency increasing affixes. So Indonesian type language, the change of voice prefix is the change of applicative suffix. So depende. Their affixes will determine its pragmatic role in the sentence, no? Okay, for example, the fried rice has not been cooked for you yet. So dimasakan is, if you notice, the Philippine language and Indonesian are considered to be the agglutinative type language typology. It's agglutinative, it's gluing, no? The use of affixes that will glue the base form, no? That will create a longer entity of a noun or verb. So that is agglutinative language typology. So unlike for Spanish, it's called to be a fusional language typology. In one word, na siya yung mga plural morpheme. So it's not obvious sa Spanish na siya yung mga wala siya, there are conjugations. However, you cannot determine exactly, dili siya consistent in terms of the use of the affixes. So unlike for the agglutinative, so you can determine the role of the affix will also be the role of the verb in the sentence. Okay, so Indonesian type language have true passive construction. So na siya yung mga passive with the use of D or ter, if you notice, if you remember. So makan, no, is the base word, and the true passive is the use of the, di ba ang use ng D is intentional, with the use of ter makan is unintentional, no? Okay, so Balinese, high register. And say high register, this is the marsyag nasa lek part na siya. So mesolek, basolek, and so on. The high register. So this is the standard way on how they use the structure. So for example, Balinese has dedicated passive prefix ka in a high register. So this is commonly used in Balinese, the use of ka. So for example, Yoman sampun ka rere. So the word ka there is the presence of the passive prefix and the re is search. So antuk ida. So Nyoman has been searched for by him or her. Okay, that is for Balinese. So kung ang Indonesian, standard Indonesian, the use of D and ter for the presence of the prefix in the passive mode in a sentence. But sa mga Balinese, the use of ka. Okay? So in the Philippines, for example, we have the valency changing approaches. Kung yung valency changing, so the ability of the ability of the doer, the ability of the verb, no, to indicate the presence of the agent, which is the doer or the patient. So for example, valency changing like active to passive, then passive to patient, active to passive, passive to active. So this is changing approaches. So natay ana. So when we say transitivity is the number of arguments, no objects that the verb can produce. So we have transitivity, and for example, we have kumain ang babae ng mansanas. That is an active voice. The woman ate the apple. So ang atua, that is the use of So it's an obligatory for a verb to affix a suffix or infix to determine the voice in the sentence. Kumain ang babae. So ang babae is now the pivot marking to indicate the doer of the action. But if it is in the passive voice, so we have the obligatory mark of the morphological prefix ni, no, niluto ng babae ang adobo. So ang adobo is now our pivot marking. So we have also applicative marking. So applicative marking in the benefactive, pinadala ng babae ang sulat kay Juan. So the obligatory marking of the prefix pina to indicate that is applicative morphology to whom? Kay Juan. So in the Philippine type of voice system, the existing valency changing approaches to Philippine regardless of the framework and so on. We have the active voice clauses are intransitive, and this is the most of the assumptions of the voice system in the Philippines that we don't actually mention, for example, the object. For example, we have here kumain ang babae. So for example, the woman ate. So kumain ang babae. So that is the assumptions of the valency changing approach to the Philippines. So kumain ang babae doesn't necessarily indicate the presence of the object, because especially when you are having a conversation, kumain ang babae. So you knew exactly in your mind that what the woman is eating if you know the context of their conversation. So the AV in the assumptions is active voice clauses. Clauses indeed are intransitive. Ang passive nato is the passive voice clauses are the basic transitive constructions. For example, niluto ng babae ang adobo. So the word ni is a prefix to indicate the presence of the passive, where the pivot is ang adobo. So okay, we have also locative voice. So it's actually applicative construction. Causative also, it's that cause something to happen. Okay, now we have also the ergative approach. So okay, so here, so Philippine type voice system, this treatment enables an ergative analysis. Naipagka-ergative pud ang atoang structure in the Philippines. So kapag ergative again, so this is the quality of the verb that can either be the use of the same verb, so to indicate can either be a transitive or intransitive. So require ba niya ang object or dili? Okay, so ang ergative absolutive, where the verb comes first and then ang absolutive is the subject. So VS tapos O. Okay, so we have here the table 3, the ergative approach to the basic arguments marking the Philippines. So kung ang sentence is actor voice, so ang pivot nato is the subject, which is the agent, and the non-pivot nato is the one that is not being focused in the sentence. Kapag patient voice nato, ang ergative nato ay ang agent, and then the pivot now is in the object. For example, we have umakyat si Juan. So, okay, so if you say umakyat si Juan, even without the use sa bukid, we can say umakyat si Juan. So can also be understood nasa sa bundok or without the using of sabuk, umakyat si Juan. Okay, so Juan climbed the mountain. So agent pivot or the absolutive is si Juan. If you notice, no, ang sa ergative absolutive, it is said that verb comes first, then followed by a subject. Okay, so that is ergative absolutive. So umakyat si Juan. So pwede po siya mingon ka umakyat si Juan sa bukid. If you say umakyat si Juan, it's still a complete sentence. If you say umakyat si Juan sa bukid, it's still the same complete sentence. So ang verb dira, ang umakyat, is the ergative verb. So umakyat si Juan, and even you say umakyat si Juan sa bundok, it's still a complete sentence. So umakyat si Juan. So that is active clause. Okay, how about The other part of the sentence sa bundok is just the non-pivot or the theme. Kung if it is, we're going to transpose that into patientive mode, inakyat ni Juan ang bundok. So if you say inakyat ni Juan, so ang ni Juan is no longer the focus in the sentence, but is actually ang bundok. So inakyat ang bundok is still a sentence. Pero siyang inakyat ni Juan, so that is hanging. So inakyat ni Juan ang ano. So nakyat ni Juan ang bundok. So that is the pivot marking. So this is non-pivot ergative and the absolutive. So ang sa Philippine language, we follow the ergative absolutive syntax alignment. Okay? So about sa Indonesia. Sa Indonesia, kung mag-ergative siya, it's actually anti-passive. So dili siya pwede ma-convert kung gamito nato ang ergative verb sa sentence. So dili siya pwede ma-passive form. Active voice siya. Kung ang ergative mode niya anti-passive, so it must be active voice. For example, what are these? Okay, for example, agent verb patient. So dia memakan makanan. So she eats the food. So if you notice, ang memakan cannot be kung ergative mode siya. So dili pwede mag-ergative absolutive ang Indonesian because it is anti-passive alteration. So wala siya valency changing. So dili siya pwede mag-active to passive kapag valency changing. Okay, so if you notice, we have nominative accusative language and ergative absolutive language. Okay, so this one I already discussed. When you say ergative, this is the quality of the verb that can function as a transitive or intransitive. Okay, so we have this one, Indonesian. So we have nominative. So ang Indonesian is nominative accusative. So SVO sila. Sa tuwa, VSO. So we follow ergative absolutive object. Okay. So valency changing sa Indonesian type. So it is anti-passive constructions. So we have the following. So these are some of the sub-languages in Indonesia. Pwede siya mag-undergoer and prefixal. So kung dili siya pwede mag-ergative, but pwede siya mag-undergoer as a voice. So with the insertion of prefix or pair, depending the kind of sub-languages used in the comparative linguistics. So these are the following. So next tayo. Okay. We have also, di ba we have high register with the use of her, no? Okay. This one, kapag low register siya, usually mga nasa mababa, no? For example, casual or informal, no? That's low register. So it is just kapag passive voice siya with the use of a. So baang a. So na same sa pipis nyo man baang a. So there both are pair in terms of use of prefix. Wala siya prefix. Okay, so again, if the by phrase in the passive voice in the sentence sa Indonesia is optional if the pragmatics is unintentional. So mogamit kag by phrase or ole if it is intentional. So ayan, no, sa passive voice. Okay, so in the Philippines, we can either be valency. When we say valency, this is the argument, no, of the verb that can produce number of objects. Okay, and it can also be active to passive, patientive to other voices depending on the focus. We have also the actor focus voice. So kumain si Maria ng tinapay. Kinain ni Maria ang tinapay. So the insertion of the prefix in the verb determines the role of the noun in a phrase or in a clause. Kapag object focus siya, naglinis, nilinis. Ayan. So here in the illustration, we have kapag in every column, so we have actor voice, agent, theme, locative, instrument, patient voice. So kapag actor voice in the valency neutral, ang topic nato is in the agent. So okay, that is and then accusative, locative, and so on. Kapag ang mode niya is patient voice, so the topic is no longer the agent, but is in the theme. Okay, this is more on, if you look at in the linguistics, kaning mga terms like agent, theme, locative, instrument, they are found in semantics. So aligned with syntax. So these terms are, sa syntax we call it as subject, verb, object, no? But sa syntax we call the subject as agent, tapos ang object patient. So theme, others say tapos yung mga syntax semantics, aside from agent, we call as experiencer. For example, it doesn't have any object, no, followed by the verb, then so on. So these are the topics. So where's the focus? Kapag sa active voice, ang focus is an agent. Ang patient voice in the sentence, ang focus is, the topic is the theme, which is the object being affected. Locative voice in a sentence, so the topic is in the place. Ang circumstantial, ang topic is the instrument. Okay, so just like what I've said here a while ago, so ang topic kapag actor voice, so if you notice, di ba, ang number 1A is the active voice or actor voice. So what is our topic there? Ang lalaki. Kapag patient voice, ang what we're talking here is no longer the lalaki but the baboy ramo. So that is the if you look back, so our topic is ang mga baboy ramo. Ng mga baboy ramo is our topic, which is the theme. So 1C, locative na nato, sub-bukid is now our topic, which is in the locative sentence. Kapag circumstantial, ang topic here is the instrument used, gamit ang sipat. So Indonesian type voice, several analysis of Indonesian type language fall under what we call non-canonical ergative approach. Because it's not conventional, it's not well established when they make use of ergative approach. So in other words, if they make use, kung attempt nila to construct ergative ang sentence, dili siya pwede sa passive but sa active voice lang yapon siya. Okay, so discourse activity depending on the construction of discourse functions, depende sa place sa Indonesia. Pwede man po pero dili siya conventional or non-canonical. Okay, so now let's look at what makes it symmetrical voice sa Philippine and Indonesia. So it makes symmetrical voice between the type of Philippine and Indonesia. They are symmetrical in a minor differences. Philippine and Indonesian languages are not the same in terms of their syntax, but the focus may have minor similarity or minor differences. Okay, sa Indonesia, tulo lang ilaha. We have the active voice, the actor, patientive, and the other one is reciprocal. No, ang atuan natay locative, natay circumstantial, we have patientive and agentive. So it's just on the focus. Okay, so active, passive, ergative. So ang symmetrical voice of Philippine is in terms of active and passive, but for the Indonesia, mag-differ ta in terms of ergative, anti-passive alterations. Okay, so so that ends my discussion on the Western Austronesian voice. So again, the Philippine type language, we follow the ergative absolutive alignment because we follow VSO, where the verb comes first before the subject, and for the Indonesian type is SVO, they follow the nominative accusative alignment. But in terms of focus, they are similar depending on the construction in the sentences. So thank you so much for listening and mabuhay.
Thank you so much, Ryan. That's really something, no? It's not easy, I know. Kapila ni mo basaha, right?
Yes, Doc. I cried over on this and out, Doc. I really prayed to God, Lord, give me wisdom, no? Yan ko, kung sa radyo ako masabtan, ako ang stuck knowledge in linguistics. So, learning another language is really a challenge, no? It's not that easy. It's a language acquisition. So, muna kong nag-FL, Doc.
Bleed, no? Apil pa ni I bleed.
Yes, Doc.
Reading all those examples and the text.
Yes, Doc.
Right, Ryan?
Explore na ko ang YouTube,
Okay, so,
ang other website to understand this topic, Doc. Murag nasa 81% akong understanding of this topic. But thank you, Doc, for giving me this opportunity to learn about Western Austronesian voice, Doc.
yeah. especially this is your report, so it's assumed that you're the one who really understands this topic, because it's not easy. You remember there are so many arguments, no, or discussions or debates about the language system of the Formosan languages, referring to especially the Philippine languages. Now I'll ask one question. The others, do you have questions? Kinsay na question? Raise your hand. Pares sa nato si Ryan.
Yes, Doc.
Hello everyone, are you there?
Yes, Doc, but I don't have any questions for Sir Ryan, Doc. But congratulations, Sir Ryan. Truly a very technical and complicated topic, Doc.
Yes, Doc.
Actually, Ryan was able to explain it thoroughly man po. Klaro nga iyag yung gitunan. Di ba, Vincent?
Yes, Doc, especially with those. I just learned about those pivot markings, Doc. I was amazed. Yes, Doc.
Yeah, because in the discussion of many linguists, they argue about what to use. Is it pivot? Is it subject? All right. Is it just the argument? Or shall we use the focus system? Or shall we use the voice system? Or are Philippine languages ergative, absolutive, or also accusative, nominative, accusative? If you read all these, if you have time to read some or just about 4 or 5, no? Linguists who really studied our language, naglalis kita sila. Right, Ryan? So,
yes, Doc. According in terms of their linguistic ideology, kasi others will say it's a
Yes.
Eurocentric, no, it's a Asian-centric, and so on. So they differ in terms of
Yeah.
context.
now what I remember, because this is by Chen and McDonald, what I remember being pointed out to us by our teacher, yun si Dr. De La Cruz, okay? Like the use of the voice, na? Dahil ang sa nominative accusative languages, they use active passive voice. Sa Philippine languages, we don't usually mention active passive, but we mention unsa nga mga voices gani, actor voice, referring to the actor or the doer,
Yes, Doc.
right? The patient voice referring to the undergoer. Vocative voice referring to the place. Sa pa isa, circumstantial.
Yes,
But
Doc.
anyway, so patient voice. Example, Ryan, di ba, sa verb palamdaan nato, then we can say what is the voice of the sentence. So sa verb, if you use the affix or in Tagalog, no? Kumain, then we know that we are actually highlighting, or the focus, the voice is actor, right?
Yes, Doc.
Or agent voice. The agent, AV. Kumain si Ryan ng mangga. Diba? So that is the agent voice. But if we will focus on the patient voice or the undergoer, then we say in. Kinain ni Ryan ang mangga. That is now the use of the ang mangga, which is now the core element or the core argument, because that is really the focus because of the kinain. Maklaro na unsa ang focus ani nga sentence. So
Yes, Doc.
the sentence is now highlighting the patient or undergoer ang mangga. Kinain ni Ryan ang mangga, no? Or if we will now have the circumstantial, which is the place. For example, kinainan, the in plus the an, kinainan ni Ryan ang what? Ang bagong lamesa, alright? Ng bagong mangga niyang nakuha, for example. So, ang bagong lamesa, mauna na siya dayon, ang atong locative. So, you see, sa ato palang daan na verb, nakakita na dito ang the meaning sa mga focus, asa ang focus sa atong sentence. That's why we are symmetrical. Pwede na to i-disarrange ang mga sentences, still will have the same meaning. Nagkaon na yun si Ryan o mangga. Something like that ba? But ang gi-focus lang nato, is it Ryan who is eating the mango? Is it the mango being eaten by Ryan? Or is it the newly purchased table where Ryan really put the mango and eat the mango, something like that, no? Or the reason, like kinainan ni Ryan ng something because dahil sa, marang something like that, no? So it's really difficult. Thank you, Ryan, no? This discussion is really something not easy. So you mentioned the ergative. Philippine languages are ergative and ergative. So to? Normat. Wait, ha?
Ergative absolutive. Doc. Ergative absolutive. Absolutive.
Ergative, absolutive, and katong sa kuan is
Nominative,
normative,
accusative, SVO.
nominative, accusative.
Yes, Doc.
And if you would also read, there are some who would say that those two are found in the Philippine languages. So malibog yun ta, no? However, I would like to believe na symmetrical yun ang atong language. Right, Ryan?
Yes, Doc.
Symmetrical yun siya. So if we say voice, and we also have what we call focus.
Focus.
The
Others say
focus
trigger.
system of the Philippines, no? Or in the Philippines. By the way, Ryan, you mentioned valency.
Yes, Doc.
Kung sagali ang valency, Ryan,
Okay.
very quickly tell us what is valence.
The valency is the number of objects that the verb produces. Either kung kaba siya na direct or naba siya direct object or indirect object or isa ra mono. Okay, that's the valency is the argument that the verb the quality of the verb produces. So pwede siya na siya
So when you
monovalency.
say intransitive, how many?
There's none, Doc.
What is that? How many?
There's no it's just a valency of no objects at all, Doc. So that's
All right. Kung transitive,
so can either be both, can either be like ditransitive, two objects, and then we have also monotransitive, only one object.
all right. So that's it, no? So how about so ko yung mention, right? The one you said, it's the unusual thing. We say, ako ay kakanta mamaya. That is unusual, no? In linguistics, we use the word marked. When you say markado ka, because kanang unusual ka nga tao ba? That is the marked syntactical, no? The word arrangement in Philippine languages, dili siya usual. We don't say, ako ay kakain mamaya. Because what we really say is, kakain ako mamaya. Okay? Kasi nagutom ako. So something like that, no? And thank you also, Ryan, for telling us, nagtuon dyan ka sa Indonesia, no? I hope you won't forget also.
Yes, Doc.
Kasaha per me, no?
Yes, Doc.
Because you really spend time reading the Indonesian language dito, no? So, what else? What did I write here? So when we say pivot again, this is the referring to the alignment system of the Philippine languages, no? And then
Yes,
we're referring to arguments. What are arguments, Ryan?
Okay,
In
argument.
linguistics. Okay, when we say arguments in linguistics, what does it mean?
Okay, argument is in the semantics na siyang aspect where the core there is the verb. So, ang arguments can either be by if you look at the subject, so that is the argument, which is the agent or the doer. Okay, and then if you have the predicate, which is the verb, and then referring to the objects, so it could either be like dative siya, indirect, or dative, and what's the other one, accusative. So these are arguments in the sentence. So kung isa syntax pa ng doc, ang tawag nila ay constituents. But in semantics, we call them as arguments, or these arguments, the constituents in the sentence.
So a sentence can have one or more arguments, right?
Yes, doc. The subject.
And you also mentioned adjuncts. What are adjuncts, Ryan?
Okay, adjuncts these
Ato,
are.
klaro sa mga classmates.
Yes, doc. So adjuncts are basically mara siya optional part in the sentence that do not carry parang important parang yes, this they are part in the sentence though. Okay, but that's not the focus, that is not the topic. So that becomes the example, binilhan ni Maria, kanyang example of kumain si Maria ng mangga. So ang word ng mangga, that becomes the adjunct there, and that is the non-pivot structure. So that is the other term we call it oblique or applicative. So
Yeah.
so
So
kumain.
what's the core argument there in that sentence? What's the core argument?
So the core arguments kapag in active voice, kumain si Maria ng mangga, we have the si Maria ug ang mangga. Kaya lang, depende lang sa pag-focus niya, Doc. So, ang si Maria
Yeah.
is our focus, the topic, which is our pivot marking there, based on the
Okay.
morphological affix sa bumili, okay, or kumain, there. So, ang applicative
Yeah.
marker there is bumili, kumain ng mangga. That is the oblique or the adjunct.
Yeah. So the core argument there is si Maria, no?
Yes, Doc.
Usually core arguments are kanang uses si or ang.
Yes, Doc.
Usually yun siya, no? Kung proper noun si. Okay? So, any other questions para mahuman na ta kang sige next.
Si Sir Lido.
Any other questions, classmates?
Wala na, please.
Paningog pud mo, oy. Are you still there?
Yes, Doc.
Yes po, Doc.
Okay, Jamil, okay question?
Wala na.
Doc.
Okay, July sa wala si Vincent, iya lang gikuan. Okay na siya, no? Sala! Rabay heart imo ang kuan. Sala!
Yes po, Doc.
Anong yes? Wala kang question?
Wala po, Doc.
Okay, so shall we go now to Albert? Kaya nagulan na po diri sa IIT. Albert, ready na Albert, no? Ryan, thank you. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Sa mga ingon ana, Ryan.
Muchas gracias.
Okay, gracias. In Indonesia, what is gracias?